Boeing.
Yay!
Not the first time I've said that word. Boeing.
I was so afraid we wouldn't get to a Boeing story.
And this will be the only place that's going to cover this in depth. I promise you that. Boeing announced that directors Edward Liddy, one of Matt's favorites, and Mike Zefirovsky will retire at the plane makers' annual shareholder meeting and not stand for re-election. To replace the retiring directors, Boeing has nominated Qualcomm CEO Steve Mollenkopf and former United Technologies CFO Akhil Johri. Before I hand this off to Matt to see if any of this smells like a big moldy bag of cronyism, I ask myself, do the professional or educational backgrounds of these new directors reveal any specific expertises which would suggest an acumen suitable to handle the monumental crisis at Boeing? And I think the easy answer is no. Johri is a numbers guy, big whoop. And Mollenkopf sells semiconductors, so I don't know why I care about that. So I'd call this a missed opportunity. So Matt, who are these guys, and could they possibly represent Boeing's new culture, or is this just more of the same old greatest hits from CEO Dennis Muilenburg's mixtape? What do you think?
Does he have a mixtape? Is it like being handed out on the street? So I want to come back to the question and just because I think like we talk a lot about Boeing. We've talked a lot about Boeing here, and there's sort of like, should anyone care? Like, is this the point in the live stream or the podcast where people are like, "Oh my God, Boeing again"? Let's remind people why we talk about it, because effectively, there's an underlying question of all of these boards, which is we have a working theory that no one gets hired unless they're known entities. There's not like a Rooney rule for boards. If you know what the Rooney rule is, it's basically in the NFL, when they go to hire a coach, they have to interview at least one person of color, because it was that ridiculous that they wouldn't even interview people of color. There is no Rooney rule for boards. There's no minimum qualification for like, you have to find somebody who's not in your sphere. So the question is, how likely is Boeing's board? And I think you basically summed it up. How likely is Boeing's existing board? How likely is any board to nominate new people who would challenge the existing culture or the power dynamics there, right? Like, how likely is that?
Especially for the 500 biggest companies we're talking about, the S&P 500. Right?
Oh yeah, the Boeing is like one of the most important companies for U.S. GDP. Like, forget S&P 500.
Right.
So we'll go one by one. And just as a quick reminder, the reason why Ed Liddy was one of my favorite is he sat on the Boeing board for 10 years. He's also been on Abbott and 3M's board for a long time. Zafirovsky is, he's been on the Boeing board forever. These are people who are on the nominating committee of Boeing. I just love that they're old white kind of dudes who keep getting jobs. But let's go one by one with these new guys. Okay. Number one, Akhil Johri. I'm going to go through the paper that I can find on them. Akhil Johri, ex-United Technologies. He was their CFO. He was their advisor to the CEO, whatever that means, which sounds like an amazing gig. Is there a reason why we don't have that gig?
I think we do. It's our cats.
I need to advise more CEOs. So props to Boeing for picking somebody who is actually a person of color. I mean, we got two dudes, so we didn't diversify. Two outgoing white dudes, but we got to give props where props are due.
It's something.
It's something. Sure. It's a thing. And this is actually worth saying that this is where sort of ESG often stops, because it's like, we get a percentage of women on boards. We've started to edge into a percentage of people of color on boards. And then it's like, okay, well, there's a high percentage of women on boards. Congratulations. We're done. We're ESG. We're very diverse. I'm not going to stop there. I'm actually going to figure out what these dudes are about.
Sure.
Johri worked at United Technologies, UTC, for 30 years, and he worked with their CEO, Greg Hayes, for a lot of it. Greg Hayes sits on the Business Roundtable board.
Of course.
Of course, the Business Roundtable is involved here. The Business Roundtable is central to everything. he sits on the Business Roundtable board with Boeing board members Lynn Good of Duke Energy. And Business Roundtable is the largest client of the Duberstein Group. Ken Duberstein was the architect of the Boeing board for the last 2 decades. No exaggeration. 2 full decades of Ken Duberstein creating what we have now, the mess we have now. So all of these people are already directly in contact with Jory. Jory worked with the UTC board as CFO, no doubt. So he probably knows their board members, including Ellen Kullman, who sits on Amgen's board with CEO Robert Bradway, who is also a current Boeing board member. So lest you think I cannot connect almost instantaneously the person of color that they chose to the Boeing sphere of influence and or relationships, I can.
Right.
That's dude number 1. That's just the first guy.
Okay.
So any thoughts about the first guy? Do we care? I mean, it feels like okay.
I don't know if I really care. 2 things to stick out. He's a numbers guy. I think one of the retiring directors is a numbers guy. So I guess they need a numbers guy. And the other thing all I can really think of is that the Business Roundtable must have a database on their intranet, and that these companies have access to, right? It's like, oh, we need a director. Who's on the list? Okay, let's just go with this guy.
So I'm actively requesting a login to the Business Roundtable database. I feel like it's forthcoming.
Yeah.
So let's go to dude number 2. And I want to stress here, this took me literally 2 hours this morning to figure this out. This is not like me doing 4 years of research. So why this isn't in like CNBC and they're not saying Boeing effectively hires 2 people who are directly connected to Boeing for board member. I don't know why it's not there, but it's not.
Because CNBC is not in the business of disruption, I suppose.
Well, maybe
right?
they didn't have a Business Roundtable login, so they didn't know that the connection existed. So dude number 2, Steve Mollenkopf, of CEO of Qualcomm. Now, Boeing and Qualcomm don't actually have as obvious a connection. Mollenkopf isn't directly related to Boeing in quite the same way. It's not like, knows everyone on the Business Roundtable board, gets hired, which I don't know for a fact is true of Jory, but I can infer from at least the paper. Until you actually...
But Qualcomm is a Business Roundtable member, though.
Yes. Well, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay.
But he's not on the board of the Business Roundtable.
Oh, come on.
Okay.
Same database.
Let's do the indirect relationships. Because if you look at Qualcomm's board, so Mollenkopf sits on Qualcomm's board. He's their CEO. You got a dude like Neil Smith, who's also a board member, vice chair of Comcast. Comcast has given Ken Duberstein's lobbying group more than $5 million since 1999. One of the single biggest clients they have, including $1.6 million in just the last 5 years.
Okay.
If I need to remind you, 40 seconds ago, I said Ken Duberstein's name because he's the architect of the Boeing board.
Yeah.
Also on Qualcomm's board, Harish Manwani. Sure. I don't know Harish. Could be a really super nice guy. Harish is also on the Blackstone board. Worth noting that Blackstone is where current Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun worked up until last year, and outgoing board member Mike Zafirovsky, and who's also on the nominating committee, works now as a special advisor. Everybody's a fucking special advisor.
Yeah, that's another code for staying on the payroll.
Can I just? I made a plea to join a board last year. I made the wrong plea. I want to be a special advisor.
Okay.
So notification, upcoming segment, becoming a special advisor to somebody on a company, getting on the payroll. So there are indirect connections, and I don't even have to go deep to talk about the Business Roundtable. On the board of the Business Roundtable are both Ginny Rometty, IBM CEO, and Safra Katz, Oracle CEO. These are 2 tech CEOs. They are 2 of the 4 Technology CEO Council board members, whose chair is Steve Mollenkopf, incoming Boeing board member from Qualcomm. So, right. I mean, it took me these people are like less than 2 phone calls away from Boeing's board. So back to the original question, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm gonna ring a bell on myself. Back to the original question. The thing to think about here, and I'm gonna start our outro music because I want you to answer while we outro.
But you want me to answer quickly?
I want you. No. We've got plenty of outro music, so take your time here. Okay.
Yeah.
This took me 2 hours of research to find out how wide the net was that they had to go looking for these people. Like, it's your buddy's friend. Like, that's as wide as they had to go. Are these people likely to deeply challenge what sounds like a highly dysfunctional culture at one of the U.S.'s most important contributors to GDP in Boeing? Are these the people that should be there?
And that hurdles people through space.
Now, let's say they're fucking geniuses. Let's say they're amazing, and let's say they didn't know any of the people beforehand. That's totally possible. I am strictly looking at paper, but from an optics standpoint, is this, as an investor who you want chosen on the board that needs to make fairly monumental decisions about this company?
Do you know how I know it's not enough? Because I went to look at the press release put out by Boeing itself, and so it had the opportunity to sell these two as a way to create new culture, to get Boeing out of its crisis, and nothing. Crickets. I mean, they had the opportunity from their communications team to tell all of us, stakeholders, shareholders, whoever, idiots like us, that these two were specially appointed to help, and nothing.
Let me read to you what Larry Kellner, who's Boeing's current chair, said. Our announcement today reflects our, quote, rigorous succession planning, which ensures we maintain the right balance of skills and experience to effectively govern the company. And then said of the two of them, they are proven leaders at complex global enterprises, and together will bring significant additional safety, engineering, software, and financial expertise to our board. Nowhere does he mention that these two people will actually challenge the cultural problems inherent.
Right. And that's the key task of the new CEO, right? Challenging the culture.
He said he made that his task explicitly. So
yeah, I think succession planning that Kellner is referring to there is a Post-it note on his computer monitor with the password to the Business Roundtable database director.
Is the password the word password?
I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's Business Pants. Do you have more for us?
No. I will add, just so people are aware of this, that these directors are nominated, right? There's actually an opportunity for shareholders at the next annual meeting, which will probably be the end of April. They could actually just vote no.
They could vote no. Imagine a situation in which shareholders
this is an election,
actually listened to some research and voted no.
Yeah, so shareholders, if you're pissed off about Bernie, you're scared about Bernie, you don't know what to do about it, why don't you exercise your voting control at Boeing and just say no to these guys?
I love it. ISS and Glass Lewis, the proxy advisors. You're pissed off that you're in the middle of an SEC battle where you're going to get regulated? Make your advice say no to these guys, because it doesn't make sense as to govern what is maybe one of the most important companies in this country. They shouldn't come from the direct sphere of Ken Duberstein.
I like saying Duber.